Hello there, and welcome. Whether you've arrived here at the end of a long, tiring day, or you're simply searching for a place to rest your mind, you are exactly where you need to be. This is a place of stillness, a place where time itself slows down, a place where stories unfold not with urgency or excitement, but with softness, like a candle flickering in the dark. Tonight's tale is not about adventure, or danger, or anything loud. It's about a quiet kind of mystery, the kind that only reveals itself in silence and in sleep. So take a moment now to settle in. If you're lying down, gently adjust your pillow. Let your shoulders drop. Allow the muscles in your face to soften. Let your breathing become slower and deeper and calmer. Let the sounds around you fade away until you hear only your own breath and my voice, steady and soft, like the rhythm of distant waves. There's nothing more you need to do. Nowhere else you need to be. Just you and this quiet story. Some stories take place on battlefields, others in royal courts or forgotten kingdoms. But tonight, our story begins in a far simpler place. A small house in a quiet village, nestled among old hills and pale trees. It's the kind of village that doesn't appear on maps. Not because it's hidden, but because it was never meant to be found. This village doesn't have towers or castles or grand monuments. Just stone paths, wooden roofs, and the slow creak of doors that have been opened by generations of quiet hands. And in one of these houses, the oldest of them all, lived a man named Elric. Elric wasn't a king. He wasn't a scholar. He was a clockmaker. But not the kind you might imagine. He didn't sell clocks. He didn't advertise his work. He didn't even own a shop. He simply built clocks, one at a time in silence, as if the passage of time itself whispered its secrets to him. And yet in this village, everyone slept well. No one could say exactly when it started, or why, but the people who lived near Elric began to notice something. Children stopped waking up in the middle of the night. The old no longer feared the darkness. Dreams became longer, more vivid, more kind. There was no sound, no ticking, no bell, just a quiet comfort that seemed to settle into the bones of the village, like warm tea on a cold evening, or sunlight through frosted glass. And slowly, a whisper began to spread among the villagers, that perhaps, just perhaps, it was the work of one clock. A clock that didn't tick during the day. A clock that no one had ever seen move. A clock that only came to life at midnight. Now you might wonder, why tell a story like this? Why speak of old houses and silent clocks, when the world is filled with faster, louder, more exciting things? Because not every story is meant to thrill. Some stories are meant to hold you, gently, until you fall asleep. And this story is for the dreamers. It's for those who find beauty in stillness, who believe that there is wonder in the quiet, who understand that some of the deepest mysteries in life unfold when no one is watching. So tonight, we will follow the story of that one silent clock. We'll move through its 8 quiet chapters, each one a soft footstep into the past, into dreams, into the spaces between hours. We'll meet Elric, the man who built it. We'll hear the legends that grew around it. We'll explore the candle that never burned out, the hour that was never marked, the window that always faced the moon, and the night the ticking finally stopped. You don't need to remember every detail. You don't even need to stay awake. This story is here for you, whether you drift off in the middle, or stay until the end. It is told with no urgency, no tension, no sharp turns, only gentle rhythm, soft language, and deep, quiet curiosity. So if your mind is still racing, if you're carrying the weight of the day, let it go now. Let your breath be your anchor. Let the story carry you, not forward, but downward into softness, into rest. Let each word be a lantern, lighting the slow path into sleep. This is not just the story of a clock. It's a story about stillness, about peace, about a time that doesn't count down or run out, but simply waits. Waits for you to close your eyes. Waits for the hush to return. Waits for the world to fall quiet, so it can begin its soft ticking once again. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere far from here, there is a place where that same clock still ticks. Not for waking, not for alarm, but just for you. So now, as you relax even deeper, we invite you to begin the first chapter of tonight's gentle tale. This is The Clock That Only Ticked at Midnight. Let us begin.
The Clockmaker's Silence. Elric lived on the edge of the village, just beyond a stream that sang quietly to itself even in the stillest winters. His home was a modest one. Stone walls darkened by rain, wooden beams warmed by time, and windows that glowed faintly when the moon was kind. He didn't speak often, but when he did, his voice carried the same weight as old books, patient, worn, and rich with things unsaid. Elric didn't seek company, yet those who passed by his home always felt a strange peace, as if they had stepped into a gentler rhythm of the world. No one quite knew where he had learned to make clocks. He never traveled far, never received mail, and never kept apprentices. But every winter, without fail, a new clock would appear on his workshop table, quiet, elegant, and strange. He did not sell them. In fact, he never gave them away. They simply stayed, as if the clocks themselves had chosen to remain. And among these clocks, resting on a polished wooden shelf in the far corner of the workshop, sat one that was different from the rest. This clock had no hands. Not at first glance. No numbers. No ticking sound. Just a face, smooth and silver, with a faint shimmer like dew under starlight. It was said that Elric had built this final clock not for time, but for sleep. He placed it in a cradle of oak and lined the shelf with velvet. He dusted it each morning, though it gathered none. And then he left it alone. Visitors noticed the clock, of course. They asked questions. Always the same ones. What does it do? Does it keep time? Why is it so quiet? Elric only smiled. The kind of smile that didn't answer, but also didn't dismiss. It was a smile of patience. Of someone who knew that the clock wasn't for questions, but for quiet. And over time, even the villagers stopped asking. They simply accepted that there was a clock in Elric's home that did not tick, did not chime, and yet somehow made everyone sleep more soundly. Children stopped waking from dreams. The old no longer turned in their beds. Even the animals outside, the dogs, the sheep, the owls, seemed to move more slowly after midnight. Each night, as the village lights dimmed and hearths grew quiet, something invisible and gentle spread outward from Elric's cottage. A kind of hush. A lull in the fabric of thought. A whisper that reminded every living thing, it is time to rest. And the clock would sit quietly, watching. It didn't count the seconds. It didn't keep appointments. It didn't correct the world's rhythm. Instead, it reminded it that time can be soft, that silence can be sacred. That midnight, for some, is not the end of a day, but the start of something deeper. In the spring, birds would return and sit on the windowsills, chirping quietly near the room where the clock slept. In the fall, leaves would gather at the doorstep, as if reluctant to leave the threshold. And still the clock remained, unwound, unpowered, yet alive in a way no one could explain. Some say Elric never truly built it, that he simply found it, or dreamed it, into existence. Others believed the clock wasn't a device at all, but a spell, a ritual, a quiet wish placed into form. Whatever it was, one thing was certain. From the day it was placed on the shelf, the nights grew calmer, and the dreams grew longer. And for the people of that small village, that was enough. But what made Elric build such a clock? Why would someone design a thing to tick only at midnight? And what could it mean? There are stories whispered among the village elders, though few remain who remember the truth. They say Elric once had a sister, younger by many years. Her name was Lyra. She was the opposite of Elric in many ways. Full of energy, a chatterbox, often found running through the wildflowers with her arms stretched wide like wings. But Lyra had trouble sleeping. Not like the restless kind most children have. Hers was deeper, a wandering mind, dreams that startled her awake, nights spent quietly staring at the ceiling, eyes wide and glistening. Elric would sit beside her some nights, reading softly from books with faded covers and frayed corners. He would speak not to distract her, but to steady the air. He believed, even then, that stories had rhythm, and rhythm brought rest. One night, when she had woken again from a dream too loud to bear, she whispered something that stayed with him forever. "I just need something to remind me it's okay to sleep." Years later, after Lyra had gone, taken by illness or simply time, the villagers weren't sure. Elric stopped making clocks for a while. He stopped doing much at all. Then one autumn night, lights were seen in his workshop again. The next morning, a new clock stood on the shelf. That was the midnight clock. It was not made to measure hours. It was not for waking. It was for keeping silence. A soft reassurance to anyone who needed a reason to rest. That winter, the dreams in the village changed. So did the stillness of night. It wasn't empty, but full. Full of something comforting and unseen. They say the clock made a sound after all, so soft it could only be heard in dreams. A slow, calm tick, just once a night. And that was enough. It was never played during the day. It only appeared on certain nights. When the wind blew east without sound. When 3 birds flew across the moon. When the fire burned blue at the edges. When someone dreamt of stairs. Then, and only then, someone would open the bottom drawer. And the game would begin. But not in the way you might expect. No one rolled dice. No one moved the pieces with any purpose. The game was about watching. About placing the pieces. Not on the mat in a strategy, but in a kind of feeling. Sometimes one would be placed alone in the center. Sometimes all 7 were laid in a circle, equally spaced. Sometimes they were stacked. Sometimes they were hidden beneath folds of cloth. And the rest of the family they would sit. And watch. And wait. Some nights the pieces seemed to hum. Some nights they grew cold, or warm. Once a piece vanished. And was found 3 days later outside in the center of the garden. No one asked how. They never asked anything. In this house, the game was not for questions. It was for presence. In other homes, games passed time. In this one, the game created it. Evenings would stretch. Hours would soften. Outside, the world might move forward, but inside the house everything slowed. And after a time, no one marked how long, the pieces would be returned to the box. The box returned to the drawer. The drawer closed. And life continued. There are those who say the game was a ritual. A way to feel the unseen winds of the world. Others say it was a clock, measuring not minutes, but moods. But the people of that house did not need explanations. For them, it was simply part of the air they breathed. It was a quiet guest. A whisper between the beams. It was the game. And it lived only there. Yet this isn't the end of what the house held. No story that breathes through generations ever stops at the edges of description. There was more to this place than the box and its pieces. There were echoes, soft, almost invisible, of what the game did to those who lived beside it. It was said that those who played it aged differently. Not slower, nor faster, just differently. Elders remembered things they had never lived. Children dreamed of places they could describe in impossible detail. One girl, aged 8, once said she had spoken to the man who made the stone piece. When asked who he was, she replied gently, "He doesn't have a name anymore, only a quiet." She said he lived underwater, but not the kind that flowed in rivers. The kind that held memory. She was not scolded, nor doubted. The adults simply listened. That was the way of the house. Sometimes a visitor would enter, a traveler caught in the rain, a friend delivering herbs. And they would feel it too. That strange stillness. That sense that the walls were listening. They never stayed long. One such traveler was a painter, passing through on his way to a larger town. He spent a night, then another, then asked if he might stay a week. He said he had never dreamed in color before. Each morning, he tried to paint what he saw in sleep, but could never capture the curve of light. Before he left, he painted the mat. The family let him. It was the only time anyone ever tried to recreate the game. He took the painting with him. But years later, the canvas was found in an abandoned cottage. It had faded to blankness. Some believed the house didn't just contain the game. It remembered it. That it had grown around it, like bark around a buried nail. That even if the box were lost, the game would continue. In dreams and shadows, in the way the wind spoke through the chimney, there were stories of other houses trying to imitate it. People who heard rumors, sought the pieces, wove their own mats. None of them worked. Because the game wasn't about the objects. It was about the place. About the way silence filled corners. About the agreement, never spoken aloud, that some mysteries are not to be solved, only witnessed. And so it remained. A secret not hidden, but simply too quiet to be carried away. The house grew older. Families came and went. But the game stayed. And on rare nights still, when the moon was thin and the night air smelled of stone and stories, someone would open the drawer. And the pieces would be waiting. Part 2, the game with no name. There was something about that quiet box in the cabinet, a secret that never needed to be spoken. No one ever gave it a proper name. Not because they forgot, but because it seemed to exist beyond words. It was simply the game. And to those who knew it, that was enough. The house where it lived was no grand estate, no towering castle. It was a modest home, built from rough-hewn stones and weathered wood. Nestled in a place where time moved slowly, so slowly that it felt as if the very air was steeped in patience. The rain here fell like a soft lullaby. The wind whispered secrets no one else heard. And the days stretched out like quiet invitations to rest. Within this house, the game sat in the lowest drawer of a cabinet, a plain wooden box with faint carvings worn smooth by generations of hands. No lock, no latch, just a lid that lifted with a gentle creak. Inside lay a soft, folded mat woven from threads that shimmered in colors no one quite recognized, and 7 pieces, each shaped differently. A smooth stone, a spiral of copper wire, a small carved wave of wood, a metal ribbon twisted delicately, a flat pebble painted in faded hues, a glass orb with tiny bubbles inside, and a feather as light as air. No instructions accompanied them. No words explained how to play, or even what the goal might be. The game was not about winning or losing, but about presence. About being still enough to hear the unspoken. The first ones who played the game were the children of the house, though none could remember who first found the box, or how it came to be there. It was always there, waiting, like the steady pulse of a heartbeat beneath the floorboards. The children learned to approach it reverently, as if touching it could awaken something deep inside the walls themselves. On quiet evenings, when the sky folded into twilight and the first stars blinked awake, someone, sometimes a child, sometimes an elder, would open the drawer. The house would settle around them as if holding its breath. The mat was laid carefully on the floor, its strange patterns unfolding like a map not of places, but of feelings. Pieces were chosen one by one, placed with care, their positions shifting subtly with every touch. The spiral copper wire might curl tighter. The glass orb might catch the last glimmer of the setting sun and glow faintly. The feather might stir as if brushed by an unseen breeze. No one ever rushed. The game demanded patience, a willingness to watch and listen rather than act. One of the earliest stories tells of a grandfather, whose hands trembled with age, yet moved with the surety of decades as he played. His eyes, cloudy with time, seemed to see beyond the mat, beyond the room, into something vast and quiet. When asked what he saw, he only smiled and said, "I am not playing the game. The game is playing me." The house, the game, and the people were entwined in a delicate dance. No one ever tried to write down the rules. They knew that such things would not capture the essence, that to speak too loudly would shatter the fragile peace. As years passed, the game became less a pastime and more a ritual. It was played on certain nights. Nights when the air felt charged with unseen energy, when the moon hid behind clouds, or when the rain whispered secrets against the windows. Sometimes it was played to honor a passing soul. Sometimes simply to remember that stillness was possible, even in a world that never stopped moving. When Elira returned to the house after many years away, she found the box waiting as if untouched by time. The mat still folded in its quiet crease, the pieces resting in their places. Elira had never played the game as a child, but she remembered the hush that fell when others did. On her first night back, she opened the drawer and hesitated. The house felt different now. Fuller, or perhaps emptier. She laid the mat down on the floor, the threads shimmering in the fading candlelight. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the spiral copper wire. As soon as it touched the mat, she heard a faint chime, soft and distant. No breeze stirred the room, but the air felt alive. Elira did not understand the game, but she did not need to. She simply sat in the quiet and let the pieces speak to her in their silent language. Nights passed. Sometimes she played. Sometimes she just watched the pieces rest. Slowly she began to write, not instructions but reflections. Thoughts, sketches, dreams. She called these writings breaths, as if each was a slow exhale into the stillness. One night, a child named Lune arrived. Quiet and curious, she was drawn to the box as if by instinct. Lune did not speak much but sat beside the cabinet for hours, listening to the silence and watching the shadows shift. She once whispered, "The mat is alive. It remembers." Others came and went, visitors from distant places, each sensing something in the house they couldn't name. Some brought gifts for the game. A stone from a mountain, a feather from a bird, a drawing made in a storm. These offerings were never placed inside the box but kept nearby, on a low shelf like a gentle altar. A musician composed a melody inspired by the arrangement of pieces. A melody so soft that the candles flickered without wind. A weaver recreated the mat in silk, but only the original shimmered as if touched by a secret light. The game did not require players to win or lose. It was a quiet companion, a presence that welcomed those who needed to be heard, even by silence itself. With each new visitor, the game grew, not in size but in depth. It was as if the house and the game breathed together, moving slowly through time and memory. One spring, a new piece appeared in the box, a glass orb, translucent and shimmering with tiny bubbles. No one knew how it arrived, but it fit seamlessly with the others. That night, those who slept in the house dreamt of lullabies in unknown tongues, of names half remembered and feelings unspoken. Some woke with tears in their eyes, as if touched by something ancient and tender. The house itself seemed to age backward. While the people grew older, the floors gleamed as if polished by invisible hands, the candlelight never faltered, and the dust never settled. Lune, now grown, became the keeper of the game. She did not try to explain it, only to listen, to the quiet movements of the pieces, the soft hum in the walls, the spaces between moments. She wrote in the margins of Elira's old breaths, adding her own questions, her own whispers. Years passed. Lune grew old, and the house grew quieter still. On her last night, she did not play the game. She sat beside it, the box open, the mat empty, the room still. When dawn came, Lune was gone. No one found her. Nothing was missing. Only the echo of her presence remained, soft and lingering. The game waits still in its quiet drawer. And so does the house. On certain nights, when the world feels a little sideways, someone will quietly reach for the drawer. The room will go still. And the game will begin. Part 3. The Legacy of the Silent Players. The story of the game was never just about the pieces or the mat, nor even the house that held them. It was about the people. The silent players who came to the quiet sanctuary seeking something they could not quite name. Each brought their own breath, their own presence, folding into the rhythm of the game like a whispered secret passed from one generation to the next. When Loon vanished at dawn, leaving only her echo behind, the house did not fall silent. Instead, it seemed to pulse with renewed life, as if it had absorbed all the quiet breaths of those who had come before. The laughter, the tears, the questions left unasked. New visitors arrived, drawn not by invitation, but by a gentle calling. A faint murmur in their dreams or a sense of longing they could not explain. They came in different shapes and ages. An old scholar burdened by years of unanswered questions. A young woman carrying the weight of grief. A child with eyes wide open, too aware of the world's noise. Each was welcomed into the house's soft embrace, where the air held a cool stillness and the shadows moved with the slow grace of drifting leaves. The game awaited them all, patient and enigmatic. It never rushed, never demanded, but invited each visitor to sit, to breathe, to simply be. One of the new visitors was a man named Sun, a cartographer who mapped the stars but had never found a place he could call home. Sin did not believe in dreams, but the house unsettled him. Not with fear, but with a quiet longing, a gentle tug at the edges of his reason. He watched the game for days, sketching its changing patterns, tracing the delicate colors of the mat. But each morning the game shifted subtly, the lines on the mat redrawn as if by invisible hands. Maps became meaningless. Sin realized the game was less a puzzle to solve, and more a melody to feel. Abandoning his maps, Sun carved a compass, not for finding directions, but for measuring silence. The compass spun wildly near the game, then slowed to a perfect stillness, as if sensing the rhythm of the house itself. He left it there, a silent gift to the game. Another visitor, a musician named Arya, brought songs inspired by the game's quiet magic. She played soft melodies on a worn lute, notes drifting through the rooms like gentle rain. The music did not fill the silence but became part of it, an echo folding into the stillness, a lullaby for the unseen. A woman named Mira embroidered her dreams of the game into delicate tapestries. The threads twisted and looped into patterns that never quite formed pictures, but evoked the feeling of something remembered yet forgotten. A landscape of feelings more than shapes. Myra's tapestries hung beside the box on a low shelf, along with stones and feathers, drawings and small gifts brought by those who had touched the game's quiet soul. The house itself seemed to breathe with the legacy of these silent players, its walls absorbing their stories, its floors keeping the gentle impressions of their footsteps. Some visitors never touched the game at all. They walked the halls, sat by the windows, or slept in the rooms where the air hummed with quiet energy. They did not need to play. Their presence was the prayer. Over time, the game became less an object and more a living memory, a thread woven through the lives of those who came seeking solace or understanding. It was a rhythm that continued long after the players left, an echo in the stillness. Loon's breaths, those written reflections and whispered questions, became a guide for new visitors. They did not contain answers but opened doors, invitations to listen, to feel, to surrender to the mystery. One question often returned. Is the game alive? No one knew. Perhaps it was in its own quiet way. Perhaps it simply was a space of stillness, a moment of connection, a gentle reminder that some things cannot be named or understood, only felt. In one corner of the house, a faded journal lay open on a wooden table. Its pages held the fragile memories of those who had come before. Fragments of dreams, sketches of the mat, poems written in soft ink. The journal was never complete, always growing, always shifting. Visitors added to it in silence, their thoughts, their questions, their quiet thanks. One evening, a child named Aaron found the journal and traced the lines with small fingers. "Is this a story?" they asked. "It is many stories," an elder replied, "all waiting for you to find your own." The house's rhythm did not change with the seasons. It flowed beneath snow and sun, through storms and calm, a steady heartbeat beneath the ever-changing world. Sometimes the game seemed to whisper, not with words, but with feelings, with flickers of light on the glass orb, with the faintest stir of the feather. Those who listened closely said it spoke of memory and time, of silence and presence. One visitor, a poet, tried to capture the feeling. The game is a quiet river flowing beneath the surface, unseen but always there, holding the reflections of stars we cannot touch. Others said it was a mirror, not of faces, but of souls. The house and the game held their secrets gently, never revealing too much, never demanding explanation. Instead, they offered a sanctuary, a place where silence could be heard, where the unspoken could be held, where presence itself was the greatest gift. Years turned to decades. The players changed, but the game remained. It was never about winning. It was about belonging, about the slow unfolding of connection, the weaving of stories, the dance of breath and stillness. The house stood quiet on its small hill, the box resting in the drawer, the mat folded with care. And somewhere inside, the game waited, patient, timeless, eternal. The house, quiet and unassuming from the outside, held within its walls an entire world of whispered stories and unseen paths. It was a place where time folded gently over itself, creating layers of memory and meaning that no visitor could fully unravel. And yet, each could touch a part, however small, and carry it away in their own breath. The game, still resting in the familiar drawer of the wooden cabinet, was not merely an object. It was a keeper of these stories. The soft mat, shimmering in hues that seemed to change with every glance, was a map not of geography, but of experience, a tapestry woven from the silent moments of every soul who had ever sat beside it. In these moments, the house revealed its deepest secret. It was less a place, and more a vessel, a container for the quiet lives that had brushed against it, a space where the intangible became almost tangible, where the unseen paths between hearts and memories were traced without footsteps. The earliest visitors had called it many things: a refuge, a sanctuary, a quiet pulse beneath the noise of the world. But to the few who truly listened, it was something more elusive, a place where silence was not emptiness, but fullness, where absence carried meaning as heavy as presence. Each new visitor brought with them a story, sometimes their own, sometimes a fragment borrowed from another time or place. And the house, with gentle patience, folded those stories into the fabric of its being. One such visitor was Mira, a woman who came carrying grief too vast for words. She had lost much: a family, a home, a future she had once dreamed of. When she first entered the house, she was silent, her eyes wide and searching, as if hoping to find pieces of herself scattered among the walls. Mira did not play the game at first. Instead, she wandered from room to room, touching the faded wallpaper, running her fingers along the worn banister, listening to the quiet sounds of settling wood and distant rain. Slowly, something shifted. One evening, by candlelight, Mira opened the drawer. The game lay waiting, familiar yet strange. She unfolded the mat and placed the pieces carefully, almost reverently. With each piece she set down, a memory surfaced, a laughter long past, a scent carried on a breeze, a moment of unexpected kindness. The game did not ask her to move quickly. It did not demand answers. It simply held space for her to be, to remember, to breathe. Night after night, Mira returned, and the house became her companion. The mat shimmered with a soft light, reflecting the slow healing taking place in her heart. Others followed Myra's example. There was Sun, the cartographer, who found his maps inadequate to contain the shifting patterns of the game, but who discovered instead a compass that measured silence. There was Aria, whose melodies filled the empty spaces without breaking the delicate quiet. There was a child named Aaron, who whispered stories into the walls, stories that no one else could hear but which the house seemed to treasure. The house did not judge. It did not hurry. It simply held the stories, the memories, the quiet breaths of those who came seeking refuge. And the game remained a silent witness, a keeper of moments that could not be captured by words or images, only felt in the stillness between heartbeats. One visitor, an elder who came late in her years, said she thought the house itself was a kind of living memory, a slow pulse beneath the surface of things, carrying the echoes of lives and loves, losses and laughter, all folded gently into the quiet. She said, "The house does not forget." And perhaps that was the truest secret of all. For the house held not only the game, but the legacy of every soul who had sat beside it. The unseen paths they had traced in silence, the whispered stories they had left behind. It was a place where time was not measured by clocks or calendars, but by the slow unfolding of presence, the soft rhythm of breathing, the quiet deepening of being. And so the house waited. It waited for the next visitor to arrive, to lay down their story like a thread in the tapestry, to touch the mat and find the game waiting, patient and eternal. And as long as there were those who sought this quiet sanctuary, the game would never end. For it was not a game to be won or lost, but a story to be shared in silence, a legacy of whispered stories and unseen paths, carried softly through the ages. Extensive detail section begins. In the course of decades, the house gathered more than just visitors. It gathered whispers, soft conversations carried on the wind, shadows flickering in the candlelight, sighs breathed into the quiet corners. Each visitor came with a different kind of silence. Some were weighed down by memories too heavy to carry alone. Some sought an escape from the clamor of the outside world. Others simply felt a gentle tug, as if the house itself was calling them home. There was a man named Ezra, who came in the deep of winter. He wore a coat threadbare at the cuffs, his eyes clouded with sorrow. Ezra did not speak much, but he carried a small, worn book, a journal filled with poems he had never shared. When he opened the box, he carefully unfolded the mat. The colors shifted beneath his fingers, soft blues blending into deep grays, a reflection perhaps of the winter sky outside. Ezra laid the carved wooden wave in the center of the mat, and as he did, the room seemed to breathe along with him. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting dancing shadows. He whispered lines of poetry, his voice barely more than a breath. In the silence between waves, I hear your name. The house seemed to listen. Ezra stayed for many nights, his poems growing softer, the words less heavy. The game, the house, and the quiet all moved together. Healing, weaving, becoming. There was also Talia, a child of 7 with wide, curious eyes and a mind full of questions no one had answers to. Talia approached the house with the innocent hope of youth, her small hands trembling as she opened the drawer. She arranged the 7 pieces in a circle, then spun the glass orb gently in her palm. The orb caught the candlelight and threw tiny rainbows across the walls. Talia laughed quietly, a sound as light as air, and the house held the laughter like a precious gift. Many who came to the house were skeptics at first, questioning what the game could possibly mean, why a simple box in a quiet room should hold such power. But as the days stretched into weeks, even the most doubtful found themselves softened by the stillness. One visitor, a scientist named Kian, came with a notebook full of hypotheses. He observed the game with careful eyes, taking notes on the shifting patterns, the subtle changes in the pieces. Yet, despite all his attempts at logic, he found no answers. Instead, Kian discovered something unexpected. A profound sense of calm, a quietness that seeped into his thoughts, unraveling the tangled webs of worry. He wrote simply in his journal, "Here in this house, The noise of the world falls away, and I am left with the pure sound of being. Years passed. The house witnessed celebrations and tears, greetings and farewells. It held secrets not spoken, questions left unanswered, and the gentle warmth of presence shared in silence. The game, always patient, always present, remained a thread that connected all who came to its quiet corner. In the deepest winter, when the snow blanketed the earth in soft white, the house glowed with a warmth that was not from fire alone. It was the warmth of connection, of stories woven together, of breaths shared in the hush between heartbeats. And in that quiet glow, the house whispered once more, "You are not alone." Reflective closing section. Perhaps that is the truest legacy of the game and the house. Not the pieces, not the mat, not even the visitors themselves, but the shared moments of quiet, the breath taken together in stillness, the unseen paths walked hand in hand through memory and time. It is in these moments that we find what cannot be named, but only felt. A gentle pulse beneath the noise. A whispered story carried softly through the ages. The house waits still. The game waits still. And whenever you find yourself drawn to quiet places, to moments of stillness, remember, you are part of this story too. Waiting to be told. Waiting to be shared. Waiting to be felt. The silent echoes and the endless night. The house stood quietly on its hill, draped in the soft shadows of evening. Time seemed to fold into itself here, as if the past, present, and future brushed lightly like the wings of a moth, stirring the air without sound. Inside, the game rested in its familiar drawer, wrapped in the gentle glow of candlelight. The mat's colors shifted faintly, blues deepening into velvety indigos, greens blending into muted grays. Echoes of the stories carried through the years. This house was more than stone and wood. It was a vessel for the silent echoes of those who had come before. It was a place where memories lingered like faint scents, and where every breath held the weight of unspoken thoughts. Tonight, the quiet was thicker, almost palpable, the kind of silence that invites reflection. A gentle pause before something unseen moves. The arrival of Ira. Ira came quietly, as if her footsteps were not hers but borrowed from the wind. She was a woman of few words, her eyes reflecting a tiredness that spoke of battles fought in shadows. She arrived just as the sun slipped below the horizon. The sky painted in soft hues of purple and rose. Ira did not know why she had been drawn here. There was no map, no whispered direction. Only a feeling deep in her chest, like a beacon calling through the fog. The house welcomed her without question, its doors opening with a creak that was more invitation than sound. She stepped inside and felt the warmth wrap around her, a soft embrace against the chill of the night. The first night. That evening, Ira wandered through the house, letting the stillness settle around her. The floorboards creaked faintly beneath her feet, the scent of aged wood and candle wax filling the air. She found the familiar cabinet with the drawer slightly ajar. Tentatively, she pulled it open and revealed the game. The mat shimmering under the flickering candlelight, the pieces resting silently like sleeping creatures. Her fingers brushed the surface of the mat, the texture smooth yet alive with subtle vibrations. She unfolded it slowly, the colors shifting as if breathing with her. Ira sat cross-legged on the floor, her breath steadying as she placed the first piece. The room seemed to hold its breath with her. The language of silence. Ira did not speak. The game required no words. Instead, it communicated in silence. In the gentle way the mat shifted colors, in the subtle warmth beneath her palms, in the faint hum that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Each piece she placed sparked a memory, a feeling, not always clear, but always present. A laugh from a childhood long past. The scent of rain on dry earth. The soft brush of a lover's hand. The warmth of a fire shared in darkness. The night deepens. Hours passed unmeasured. Outside, the world grew dark and quiet, the moon rising high to cast silver light through the windows. Inside, Ira's breath slowed, the rhythm of the house syncing with her own. The game was no longer just an object. It was a companion, a mirror reflecting her innermost self. She felt the weight of years lift gently, replaced by a calm she had not known in a long time. Echoes of those who came before. As the night deepened, Ira felt a presence beyond the tangible. The echoes of those who had sat here before her, their stories woven into the very fabric of the house. She sensed Myra's slow healing, Sen's silent compass, Aria's melodies weaving through the walls, the laughter of Talia, the poems of Ezra, the whispered stories of Aaron, all carried softly in the breath of the room. They were here with her now, invisible companions in the shared silence. The weight of unspoken questions. Despite the peace, some questions lingered, unspoken but felt deeply. Why had the game existed for so long without explanation? What did it mean to play a game with no rules, no goals, no victory? Could silence itself be a language? One that spoke louder than words? Ira did not seek answers tonight. Instead, she embraced the questions as part of the mystery, as gentle invitations to deeper understanding. The house remembers. Long after Ira's breath slowed into sleep, the house remained awake, a sentinel holding the quiet stories close. The wooden floors, worn smooth by years of footsteps, seemed to pulse softly. The walls held the echoes of laughter, tears, and whispered secrets. The game rested peacefully, ready for the next visitor drawn by its silent call. Morning light. As dawn crept over the horizon, light spilled into the rooms, touching the dust motes dancing in the air. Ira awoke with the sun, feeling lighter. Not because answers had come, but because the house had held her, and the game had listened. She left no mark beyond her presence, no record, no claim. Only the memory of a night spent in the company of silence and the quiet heartbeat of the house. The endless night. The house and the game were timeless, existing beyond ordinary measures. They did not seek to solve mysteries but to hold them. To be a refuge for those who needed a place to be seen without words. The game was a mirror held up to the soul, reflecting not what was lost or gained, but what simply was. It was a quiet promise that in the stillness, there is always connection, reflections on presence. In a world that rushes and demands, the house offered a different kind of time, a time measured in breath, in quiet moments between heartbeats, a time where presence itself was a gift, rare and precious. Those who came learned to listen, not just with ears but with their whole being. They learned that some stories are not told aloud but lived softly, in silence. The legacy continues. And so the legacy of the house and its silent game continues. It is carried in the hearts of those who find their way here, drawn by something beyond explanation. It is whispered on the wind, folded into dreams, painted in colors only the soul can see. The game waits, patient and eternal, inviting each new visitor to become part of the quiet story. Final thoughts. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not in understanding, but in allowing ourselves to simply be, to sit with silence, to breathe with presence, to feel without needing words. The house and the game remind us that sometimes the deepest connections happen not in noise or action, but in quiet companionship. And as long as there are those who seek this gentle sanctuary, the game will never end. It will continue. A soft, endless night of whispered stories, silent echoes, and unseen paths. The quiet sanctuary and the flow of time. The house rested in a gentle stillness, as if holding its breath beneath the vast expanse of sky. Light shifted softly through the windows, tracing patterns on worn wooden floors. Echoes of footsteps long since passed, and the quiet weight of stories yet to be told. Within this quiet sanctuary, time unfolded like a slow river, its currents hidden beneath a glassy surface, moving unseen but ever present. The game, nestled once again in the familiar drawer, waited patiently for the next story, the next breath, the next soul-seeking refuge. Arrival of Liz. Liz arrived on a soft spring afternoon, her footsteps light but hesitant. Her eyes held a quiet resolve, though shadows lingered beneath their edges. She had come not out of curiosity, but necessity, a search for something she could not name, but felt deeply in her bones. The house welcomed her without question, its doors swinging open like an old friend's embrace. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of aged wood and candle wax. Dust motes danced lazily in the beams of light, carried on currents too gentle to feel. Liz moved slowly through the rooms, her fingers tracing the worn surfaces, each touch a silent greeting to the past. The game awaits. Drawn instinctively to the cabinet, Liz opened the drawer and found the game resting there as always, quiet, patient, waiting. She unfolded the mat and found the pieces arranged as if left by an unseen hand. They shimmered softly, colors shifting with the light. Liz sat cross-legged on the floor, her breath slowing as she allowed the silence to enfold her. With careful hands, she began to move the pieces, not guided by rules, but by feeling. A dance of memories. Each piece placed stirred something within Liz. A memory half remembered, a feeling unspoken. She saw herself as a child, running through fields beneath endless skies, laughter ringing like bells on the wind. She felt the warmth of a hand held tightly in a moment of fear. She remembered the bittersweet ache of goodbyes whispered under stars. The game did not demand understanding. It only invited presence, a dance of memories flowing softly like a quiet stream. The rhythm of the house. As Liz played, the house seemed to breathe with her. Floorboards hummed softly beneath her. Walls absorbed and reflected her silent rhythms. The candle flickered gently, shadows swaying in time with the slow unfolding of her story. Outside, the world moved on, but inside this quiet sanctuary, time stretched and folded, expanding and contracting with each breath. Visitors before and after. Liz sensed the footsteps of those who had come before. Myra's healing silence, Sen's uncharted compass, Aria's whispered melodies. She felt the gentle laughter of Talia. The poems of Ezra carried on a breeze. The stories whispered by Aaron into the walls. The house held their presence as a sacred thread woven into its being. In that moment, Liz realized she was part of a greater story, a chain of presence and quiet connection stretching through time. The unseen paths. The game was more than a collection of pieces and colors. It was a map of unseen paths. Pathways between moments, between people, between memories and dreams. Liz closed her eyes and imagined these paths. Winding trails lit by soft lanterns. Bridges built of whispered words. Doorways opening into quiet spaces where hearts could rest. She felt a deep peace, knowing she was walking one such path. A journey not of distance, but of depth. The language beyond words. Words often fall short. They stumble and falter under the weight of what truly matters. But silence speaks in a language beyond words. A language of breath, of presence, of shared stillness. The game taught Liz this language gently, patiently. It asked nothing, judged nothing. It simply held space. Nightfall and reflection. As the sky deepened into twilight, Liz sat quietly, the mat spread before her, pieces resting gently in her hands. She thought of all who had come here, of their stories folded like quiet wings. She felt the house's embrace, a warmth born not of fire, but of understanding. Liz knew she was not alone. A gift to carry. When morning light spilled softly through the windows, Liz rose, her heart lighter, her breath slower. She closed the drawer gently, leaving the game waiting for the next seeker. Outside, the world was loud and hurried, but inside her, a quiet sanctuary remained. A gift to carry. Enduring mystery. The game's mystery did not lie in solutions or endings. It was found in the ongoing flow of stories, in the gentle gathering of presence, in the quiet exchange of breath and memory. The house waited, patient as ever, its story unfolding softly, endlessly. Invitation. If you ever find yourself drawn to a quiet place, to a gentle rhythm beyond noise and haste, listen closely. You might just hear the soft call of the game, waiting for your story, your breath, your quiet presence. Closing thought. In the stillness, we find connection. In silence, we find ourselves. And in the quiet sanctuary of a house and a game, we discover that sometimes the deepest journey is the one we take within. The threads of time and the quiet watchers. The house, nestled among ancient trees that swayed with a secret rhythm, stood untouched by the frantic pace of the outside world. It existed in a different realm, one where the whispers of time wove themselves into a tapestry of silent memories, each thread glowing softly in the dim light of dusk. Within this sanctuary, the quiet watchers remained ever present. They were neither ghosts nor spirits, but gentle guardians of stories untold, of moments held in tender suspension. The house breathed with their presence, its walls humming softly like the deep chords of an old melody. The silent guardians. These quiet watchers were the invisible keepers of the house's soul. They moved without sound, their footsteps merging with the creaks of old floorboards and the sighs of shifting shadows. They had watched over the game for centuries, unseen but never absent. Their duty was simple: to hold the space for those who came seeking refuge, to guard the fragile threads that connected past and present, and to weave new stories into the ever-growing fabric of the house. No visitor saw them clearly, but all felt their presence, a subtle warmth, a fleeting breath on the back of the neck, a soft glow in the corner of an eye. Arrival of Kalen. One cool autumn evening, as golden leaves fell like whispers onto the earth, Kalen arrived at the house. His eyes were pools of quiet longing, reflecting a soul searching for answers beyond words. Unlike others, Kalen came not in search of healing or escape, but out of a deep need to understand the threads that connected him to a past he barely remembered. The house opened its doors without hesitation, welcoming him into the fold of silent watchers and whispered stories. Exploring the house, Kalen moved slowly, deliberately, through the rooms bathed in twilight. Each step was a meditation, each breath a prayer to the quiet. He ran his hands along the cool stone walls, feeling the pulse of ancient memories embedded within. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, melted wax, and wood polished by countless years of touch. He found the cabinet, the gateway to the game, and hesitated only briefly before pulling open the drawer. Inside lay the familiar mat, glowing faintly under the fading light, its colors shifting in a slow, hypnotic dance. The first move. Kalen seated himself on the floor, the soft rug cushioning him like a lover's embrace. He unfolded the mat carefully, marveling at the subtle shimmer of its surface. The game awaited him, pieces poised in silent invitation. Without instruction, Kalen reached for the first piece, a small carved token shaped like a leaf. As he placed it on the mat, the house seemed to sigh, a wave of warmth rolling through the air. Threads of memory. With each piece Kalen placed, the threads of memory began to unravel gently. He saw fleeting images, a garden bathed in morning light, the scent of rain on dry earth, the sound of laughter carried by the breeze. These memories were not his alone, but part of the collective tapestry woven by those who had come before. He felt himself both observer and participant, a thread in the vast weave of the house's story, the quiet watcher's song. As the night deepened, the silent guardians made themselves known, not with words, but through subtle signs. A feather drifted down from the ceiling, landing softly beside Kalen's hand. A candle flickered in rhythm with his heartbeat. A distant melody, soft and ethereal, wove through the air like a lullaby. Kalen closed his eyes, allowing the music to fill him, to carry him deeper into the sanctuary of the house. The flow of time. Time within the house was fluid, bending and stretching like a slow river. Minutes dissolved into hours. Hours folded into timeless moments. Kalen lost track of the outside world, his soul attuning to the gentle rhythms of the game and the house. The mat beneath him was no longer just an object, but a map of the unseen. Pathways connecting hearts, memories, and dreams. The dance of shadows. Shadows played across the walls, their forms shifting like dancers in a slow ballet. They told stories without words, of love and loss, of hope and despair, of journeys taken and those yet to come. Kalen watched, entranced, feeling the weight of their silent poetry. He realized that the house was a stage for these stories, and he was both audience and actor in this quiet performance. Echoes of the past. As the night wore on, the echoes of past visitors seemed to mingle with Kalen's own presence. He sensed Myra's healing touch, Aria's soft songs, Sen's thoughtful silence, the laughter of children and the tears of the lost, all wrapped in the house's tender embrace. Kalen understood that each visitor's story was a thread in the vast tapestry, each breath a note in the house's endless song. The language of the heart. The game spoke in a language beyond words. It was the language of the heart, quiet, subtle, profound. Kalen felt it in the warmth spreading through his chest, in the soft pulse of connection bridging past and present. He knew then that the game was not to be won or lost, but to be felt, to be lived. A moment of stillness. At the deepest hour of night, Kalen paused, closing his eyes to the world. He breathed in the silence, the stillness, the sacred space between heartbeats. In that moment, he touched the essence of the house, a quiet sanctuary where time folded gently, and stories lived forever. Morning's arrival. With the first light of dawn, Kalen rose, feeling a peace he had never known. He closed the drawer softly, leaving the game waiting for the next traveler. As he stepped outside, the world seemed sharper, yet somehow softer, transformed by the quiet magic of the house. The endless weave. The house, the game, and the silent watchers continued their eternal dance. They waited patiently, holding space for every soul drawn to the quiet sanctuary. Each visitor added a new thread to the endless weave, a tapestry of memory, presence, and gentle connection. Invitation to stillness. If ever you find yourself weary, drawn to a quiet place beyond the noise, listen closely. You may hear the soft call of the house, the whispered invitation of the game. And when you answer, know that you are part of something vast and tender. A story without end, held in the heart of a quiet sanctuary. Closing reflection. The greatest gift of the house and the game is the reminder that presence itself is sacred, that in silence, we find connection. And in connection, we discover the threads that bind us across time, space, and memory. Conclusion. The drawer is closed now. The room is quiet again. But something lingers, doesn't it? Not in the air, not in the walls, but somewhere much quieter. Somewhere inside you. This wasn't a story that asked anything of you. It didn't offer you a hero to follow, or a mystery to solve. It simply invited you to sit quietly and feel. We've walked through rooms without names, listened to voices that spoke without sound. We've witnessed gestures that became rituals, and rituals that never sought meaning. Each visitor to the house brought nothing, and yet left a part of themselves behind. Sometimes a piece, sometimes a pause, sometimes just a breath. And now, as we reach the edge of this long, quiet journey, you might be wondering, was there a point? But perhaps that's the beauty of it. Perhaps the point was the path itself. The slow unfolding of silence, the gentle turning of unseen pages, the shared presence between you, me, and something neither of us can name. Because somewhere out there, maybe still today, that drawer waits. Maybe the house crumbled years ago, or maybe it stands still, untouched by time. Maybe it was never a house at all, but a space inside us. A place we visit when we need stillness more than sense. When we crave wonder over reason. The game didn't need rules. Because it wasn't a puzzle, it was a mirror. It reflected how we sit with uncertainty. How we listen without expectation. How we notice the rhythm of breath, the shape of a thought, the space between words. And now, dear listener, the story ends. Not with a door closing, but with one opening. An opening into your own stillness. Because you are the next player now. Not to win. Not to understand. But simply to notice. Perhaps the next time your room goes quiet, you'll feel it again. That hush that settles not from absence, but from presence. From something waiting, not to be unwrapped, but to be sat with. There are stories everywhere, hidden in the folds of time, in the corners of rooms, in tea left unfinished, in footsteps that don't echo, in the way we share silence without filling it. Let this one stay with you, not as a tale, but as a tone. Not as a plot, but as a pause. Let it color the edges of your dreams tonight. Let it whisper gently into your breath as you drift off. And if, in some forgotten corner of your day or night, you hear a drawer open in your imagination, don't be startled. It's just the game beginning again. No pieces to place. No moves to make. Just presence. Just peace. Just you, and the quiet, and whatever it is that waits in the soft space between. Thank you for walking with me through this. If you haven't yet, I gently invite you to subscribe, so you can find your way back whenever the world feels too loud. Leave a comment if the silence spoke to you. Or share this with someone else who may need a story that doesn't rush, doesn't demand, and doesn't shout. And now rest. Let the drawer close softly. Let the breath deepen. Let the night wrap itself around you like the last page of a story without an ending. Good night.